here because I always kick off the show a little bit too soon and then it gets cut off. So, all right, that should do it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the NASCAR DFS Strategy Show presented by Awesemo.com. I'm joined today with Phil Bennettson, aka Ray Sheets. Phil, how are you doing today?
Great, Alex. How about yourself?
Pretty good. Excited for some NASCAR this weekend. I mean, we got the Xfinity and trucks today and then the Cup tomorrow. So there's a lot of chances to play some DFS. And it might be the biggest slates we're going to get in the near future with some more weekend sports coming back. So
yeah,
I feel like you got to make the most of this opportunity tomorrow and get the win before the win's not going to be worth as much. Today we were sponsored by SuperDraft. SuperDraft is the newest game in NASCAR DFS. They have the multiplier system, so you can pick any six drivers you want. You don't have to worry about doing all the math for the salary cap. They also have some great bonuses, which we'll talk about later. All right, so we're going to Texas tomorrow, the O'Reilly Auto Parts 500. But let's rewind a little bit because we had two races over the past week. We had the All-Star race. So, let's talk about the All-Star race first. So, I mean, what did you make of it, and what did you see?
Glow kits are awesome. It's like it's 2001 again. Everybody's just watched Fast and the Furious. They want whiteouts on their taillights. They want big spoilers, and they want a glow kit underneath their car. It's fantastic. Now, I have to say, if NASCAR absolutely runs out of every gimmick that they can throw at the series, why not just make every race a night race and use the glow kits? I mean, crap, it'll be the most entertaining thing that we've seen out of NASCAR in probably a while. As far as the racing, I think it kind of went the way that we expected it to go. Like, I think actually the open races were a bit more along the lines of what we thought we would get versus the actual All-Star race. I mean, it still blows my mind that the final 15 lap segment of the All-Star race, no cautions. I mean, nobody was trying to wreck anybody else to try to, get themselves to the $1 million. Nobody was driving aggressive to move people out of their ways to try to get up to chase. It was clean. And that still kind of baffles me. Now, what you're seeing is Bubba and Michael McDowell have a little bit of a beef now. Bubba was all over Michael's back end. And then once Bubba finally got around him, Michael returned the favor, put Bubba in the wall, and then Bubba promptly left his bumper on Michael's hauler, and now they're auctioning off Bubba's bumper for charity. It's a weird beef, but I mean, that's what you would expect at Bristol in an exhibition race. That's what we got, and it's kind of sad that we didn't get to see that elsewhere throughout the actual All-Star race, because it would make it a little more interesting going into a race 4 days later with all of these angst and anger still kind of hanging over drivers' heads, especially when you think about what race conditions are going to be like at Texas tomorrow. And this is what we're going to get into next. The Texas that we're going to see tomorrow, it's unlike any other Texas that we've ever seen. If you live below the Mason-Dixon line, that late June through about really early September, it's ugly down here in this part of the country. The heat, the humidity, it produces a climate that you really don't want to be outside in unless you absolutely have to. And because of that, Texas has always scheduled their first race in the spring around late March, early April, and then their final race always happens in either late October, early November, coinciding with the playoffs. There's a big gap there that they're trying to avoid, having fans sit out in that hot blazing sun. Well, because of COVID-19, we're going to have this race in July, and we're going to have race conditions that we've never really seen before with the heat and humidity. It's going to be a hot track. It's going to be a slick track. We've kind of seen this when the Truck Series races at Texas. They always come down this time of year. Now, albeit it's a night race that typically happens on I believe on a Friday night, but still, even with it being a night race and temperatures being cooler, it's still a hot, slick track, and it is typically a mess. I mean, it's just a matter of, can you survive through attrition and make your way to the top? And don't be surprised if you see that tonight, where a bunch of your guys are just all over the place. You will tilt your face off, believe me. So
all right, well, hopefully
we take that and we put that in the middle of the day. It's going to be.
Hopefully we get a more exciting race than we saw on Wednesday night with the All-Star. Let's get some good luck. First of all, hit that thumbs up. Hopefully that'll help us get a good race and not some boring one where no one's passing each other. Now, Michael McDowell the other night, I was watching. He made a pretty noob driver mistake. He forgot to check his blind spot, right? But then on Sunday, I watched the most important part of the race, stage one. And then I tuned back in to the results later. I'm like, Cole Custer won. What the heck happened? Like, basically, like, for one of these guys to win, usually, like Cole Custer, there needs to be a caution really, really late that just bunches everybody up. And then it's all up to luck after that. So what happened there?
Yeah, I mean, it's been weird, but we have had we keep having these races where if a driver is just kind of in the right pit sequence towards the end of the race, he can manipulate his way into the top 10, with how many ever laps to go, and put himself in a good spot. And I mean, that's what happened with Cole Custer. Yeah, he should have had no business being in the top 5, but you bunch everybody back up with a couple laps to go. He starts on the outside on the third row. He's able to make a really good charge on the outside. He gets blocked by Truex, and when he gets blocked by Truex with 2 laps to go, I thought it was going to kill all of his momentum, and he was done for. But I mean, he kept charging through on the outside, made a pretty aggressive move on the outside when there wasn't really that much room between the wall and Truex, and kind of slid his way through there. Helping him was, besides Truex, you had Harvick, and then Blaney, who was making a really aggressive move on the inside, but Blaney forgot about that bump on the near the infield, hits that, comes flying into Harvick. It kills both of their momentum, and Truex catches up so that he isn't part of a 3-car crash. Boyer goes on around him and scores his first win. I mean, like, sometimes you just have to be lucky. Now, Custer getting to where he was, that was victim of circumstance and good driving that day. But then from what he could do from starting 6th with 2 laps to go to winning that race, I mean, hats off.
Yeah, it happens like once a year that some random dude wins one of these races, and everyone's like, what the heck? That never happens. But let's talk about the race tomorrow, because I mean, I guess the conditions are going to be a lot hotter, as you mentioned, but the track itself, it's a 1.5 mile mid-length track, and it's pretty much a run-of-the-mill NASCAR venue. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I mean, when you think of intermediate D-shaped ovals, that's Texas in a nutshell. They've been racing here at Texas since the late 90s. I mean, this was part of the tracks that gave birth to the other intermediate ovals, like your Kansas, like your Kentucky, like your Chicagoland. I mean, it is a bit disappointing that the way that the calendar has fallen, that we're going from Kentucky to Texas to Kansas. I mean, we are just seeing the same track basically three straight weeks in a row. And really the only thing that's going to be different probably this week compared to the other twos is that the temperature and the humidity is going to be that much greater than what we saw at Kentucky last week, and probably what we're going to see at Kansas next weekend.
Nice. So I mean, what the first thing I do when I look at a race is I look at, what are the sports books offering here? And usually, like this past few months, we've been seeing like the big favorites are like maybe 7-1 or 6-1 to win, which is, like 15% or something. So today I look and Harvick is like 3-1 at different books, and it's like, what's really changed between today and last Sunday? Because that seems kind of like a big gap between him and the rest of the field.
I have to think it's this track history that is just, yeah, like if you were looking to lay money on Harvick as a favorite, you're probably really disappointed in that number. But I mean, you have to think about this. The last 3 fall races at Texas, Harvick has won. Going back since the 2016 repave, after the fall 2016 race, they repaved Texas. Ever since then, Harvick's worst finish is 8th. I mean, we're talking about a guy whose average finish in 6 races is 2.8. Average 83 laps led per race, 53 fastest laps per race, 125.8 Dominator rating, 92.6 DraftKings points per race. That is 30 points better than the next guy below him. 82.9 FanDuel points. A good, I believe, a good 11 points better than the next guy below him. I mean, Harvick has literally been the king of this track. And his success has spilled over into the rest of the Stewart-Haas stable. As you know, we'll talk about other guys further on to this, but I mean, you are paying those odds because of just how good Harvick has been here.
Yeah, I mean, it seems a little unusual because, like, to me, the most important factor is the car, of course. But okay, so in NASCAR, the way I see it is like some people will try to tell you a guy's better at driving like a triangle than a circle, and it's like, I mean, at the end of the day, it's pretty much the same thing. At least, I mean, I'm kind of uh, I, I'm not a motorsports guy. I just look at the data, but I mean, maybe there is a lot more subtlety to this. So, how do you feel about the course history as a factor to bet on NASCAR?
Yeah, I mean, this is the course history noise that we talk about in PGA. Just how much do you weight it? How much does it really matter? And I have to think for some of these guys, like it truly does matter. The streak that Harvick's been on. I mean, we'll just throw out track history altogether. When you look at what Harvick's been doing this season, I mean, if it wasn't for that late race caution, Harvick had pretty well passed Truex, and he was going to win a race that he had no business winning. I mean, Harvick really hadn't been a factor at Kentucky at all last week, and then what do you know? Here he is, and he's about to steal this race before the caution comes out. So, yeah, I think some of these guys, like perhaps I think the better way is like the more nuanced stuff, like road courses. You can really take the data out of there and say, yeah, this really applies to it, because some of these guys are just that much better at turning left hand right versus turning left. But yeah, I don't want to talk out of both sides of my mouth, but God, when the numbers are this good, you have to pay attention.
Absolutely. I mean, you're just looking at his game log here. His finishes 3, 4, 1, 2 over the last 4 races. So I mean, he's been absolutely crushing.
Yeah.
And we've seen usually really consistent guys like Martin Truex and Kyle Busch be really inconsistent this season so far. I mean, people talk about practice a little bit, and who knows, what's going on, but Harvick's been the best, and it's really obvious if you look at the draft screen, because he's averaged 60 fantasy points per game, per race. The next highest is like 48. So there's a huge gap between him and second, and I'm expecting him to be pretty popular tomorrow. I have him currently as the most popular of all the drivers. So he's expensive though, 11.3K. And 75% of the time, according to that 3-1, he's not going to win. So when you have And then I'll throw out another figure here. This is from my top drivers tool. I have him as a 61% chance to be one of the top 6 scoring drivers tomorrow. The next highest is about 49%. So when you have such a great driver that's going to be really high owned, how does that dictate your strategy for a race?
Yeah, I'm never afraid of embracing chalk, especially. I mean, when it comes to these potential lap leaders this year, it seems like our gaze has been narrowed that much more. Like on a week to week basis in a normal year, we can kind of expand who we're looking at because these drivers have the benefit of practice to help aid them. But I mean, this year it's been a pretty narrow gaze of Harvick, Hamlin, Keselowski, Blaney, Chase, and really that's it. I mean, you just kind of mix and match those guys, and to toot this horn again, when I can look at Harvick's numbers and see what he's done recently, what he's done at this track, it's chalk that I'm not afraid of embracing. And quite frankly, 14.5 for Harvick on FanDuel, that's fair. But 11.3 on DraftKings in a 327 lap race, he should be closer to that 12K mark that we saw Kyle Busch at plenty of times last year.
It's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I always like being contrarian in DFS, but fading a guy that's the best play by dollars and the best play by overall chances to perform is not usually a great strategy. I mean, I don't. I think I'm going to have a lot of lamps with him and a lot of lamps without him. I'm probably not going to take a huge stand one way or the other. But the numbers here that I'm seeing are pretty compelling. I mean, he's starting at 5th. Usually that would not be great for leading laps, and at least at the start of the race. But you have Almirola and Blaney 1, 2, Kurt Busch 3, and then Kyle Busch is 4. So the odds are actually pretty decent that Harvick is an early leader. Not a lock by any means, but he could just dominate the whole race. That he has that kind of upside.
Yeah.
And man, the only thing is if you're trying to take down a really top heavy tournament, like we see on DraftKings and FanDuel, having a guy that costs that much kind of does limit. It funnels you into certain lineup constructions, and that's the inherent disadvantage of that kind of salary guy. So when I'm looking at all the sportsbook bets, like minus 175 to finish ahead of Hamlin. I mean, Hamlin has been the second best guy all season, so about 65% chance to do better than him is like, yeah. So,
well, I think it comes down to this question: do I want to try to pivot off of Harvick, especially on FanDuel, down to maybe Denny, who's $500 cheaper, Chase, who's $1,300 cheaper, and hope that they hit this? Because if Harvick leads, just say 100 laps, gets the fastest laps, we're talking probably about a 95 to a 100 point day. Do I genuinely believe that a pivot to Hamlin or Chase, that they're going to be able to hit this same kind of fantasy point threshold? Or do I just embrace this play and then hope to find my differentiation somewhere else with a cheaper place differential guy, going with a guy maybe who starts a little bit further up the board than these guys that are all in the 20s that are probably going to see 35-40% ownership? It's just so much easier to play that game than hoping that you get one of these lower owned dominators that's going to hit that same point threshold.
Yeah, I think that if you're not picking Harvick, you definitely want to pick some other guys that can have that early lead. And number one, Eric Almirola, like at pole position. I mean, so if we saw this 2 months ago, I bet we'd be like, this is crazy. He's never going to lead the race. But now it's like he's been pretty good, and it's not that big a stretch to think that he could lead maybe like 50 laps at the start, given his preferred position here. So, how do you feel about Almirola this week?
Yeah, Almirola, he's this is his third year with with Stewart-Haas Racing, and his first race, a 32nd place finish in the spring of 2018. But then since then here at Texas, 8th, 7th, and 2nd last fall, and that was after leading a good amount of laps. In fact, what was it? Yeah, he led 62. Harvick led 119 laps in that race, and then Almirola himself led 62 laps. And Almirola was the surprise to me last week. Kyle should have. I don't care. X on Kyle. I can't play him again. He had everything that he should have ever needed to lead more than 10 laps, and that was all he could muster last week. But Almirola, charged through there, took the lead, and he was able to maintain it. I mean, nobody could catch up to him at Kentucky, and he just rolled off those laps led points.
Yeah.
I really like Almirola. You're getting him at a pretty good price at 8,100 on DraftKings. He's a little up there on FanDuel at 10-6. I was surprised to see them price him that aggressive, but I mean, he has been running really, really well since Homestead. In fact, if I look at his finishes, you are talking about a driver that has not finished outside of the top 8, and that was last weekend at Kentucky. Every other finish is either a 3rd or a 5th during this run at Homestead. He has been running so consistently. It's been really, really good from it. And this is the funny thing is that even if Almirola doesn't lead that many laps because he's got Blaney starting next to him, at 8,100 here on DraftKings, you still feel like you're getting a guy that's going to finish in that 3rd to 7th place range, and that could still be of value at his salary. And he's probably going to knock down some fast laps in the process. Over his last 6 races at Texas, he's averaging at least 11.8 fastest laps. So I mean, you feel like you're going to get some of those points. And so even if he doesn't lead, but we're expecting him to as a potential dominator. But even if he doesn't lead, he could still make you value because of a top 5 finish.
Yeah, it's a high upside play because of the fact that stage 1 is 105 laps, and that's like 25 fantasy points. So
yeah.
that could, if you lead stage 1, that's huge. Now I do have a breakdown of all my projected stats for each driver on my projections page, so you can check that out. I have him as the 3rd highest lap sled on average at 35. And that, because there are so many laps this week, that's going to add up, and that makes him more appealing than some other weeks where he's starting high up too. Now I have his average finish as 12.5. So more often than not, he's going to move backwards, and that does hurt his value significantly. Yeah. But on SuperDraft, he's 1.2x, and of course on SuperDraft, they don't have the salary cap, so instead you get a different amount of fantasy points for each driver for each stat. So 1.2 times as many fantasy points as Harvick, so that's kind of appealing. Now we have a promo for them. If you use the promo code Awesemo10, then you get $10 free on your deposit of 10 or more, and $20 free on depositing 100 or more. Now I know a lot of you guys watching probably don't make a ton of lineups, and the way I think about it is like you want to spread out your action between as many different sites and slates as you can, because that really helps you build your skills, and also if you're a winning player, build your bankroll without making your risk significantly higher by investing it all on one race or one slate. So like the lineups you're going to build on SuperDraft are going to be a lot different than on DraftKings and FanDuel, and of course you use my stuff behind the paywall, as well as Phil's article every week about SuperDraft to help you make plays there. So, all right, let's talk about some other dominators here. Ryan Blaney has been another guy that's been surprisingly good, I'd say. I mean, he's got a better funded team than Almirola, so not as much of a surprise, but he's been exceptional. He's definitely won people a ton of money over the past couple months, and he's starting 2nd. I'd say that it's going to be pretty much a coin flip whether he or Almirola gets off to that early lead because he's got the better equipment, but then the worst starting position. So how do you feel about taking some chances on Blaney here?
Oh man, I love Blaney. In my picks article for DraftKings and FanDuel, I basically alluded to that your lineups are probably going to start Harvick Blaney, like that. It seems like just a foregone conclusion that those are going to be the two drivers that lead the most laps. And quite frankly, on DraftKings, there's nothing stopping you from going Harvick, Blaney, and Almirola together in a lineup, because you think about Harvick's 11.3, that's so, but you're getting Blaney for under 9,000, you're getting Almirola for almost 8,000. So you're getting really good values on these potential lap leaders. Blaney, he's done really well here at Texas. He's got a 37th place finish last spring, but other than that, everything else has been in the top 12. He's got a second place finish from the fall race of 2018, averaging 38.8 laps led, 21.3 fastest laps. He's run well here, really well, and he'll have the advantage of track position over the rest of these guys. And like you said, it's really in those first opening laps, I think it is just going to be a matter of who's got the better initial setup versus Almirola and Blaney, and that'll probably really determine who ends up with the more points that day.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are going to be good picks because we have 340 laps, I think. So that just it allows you to put more of these guys in your lineup, and when you combine that with the prices, we have let's see, Almirola is 8,100, as you mentioned. Blaney is 8,900. So you don't need to break the bank to get these guys. Now, my strategy, I think, will be that I'm just going to pick one guy starting towards the front and hope that, I get the right one to lead the laps in the first stage. And then maybe that would be one of Almirola, Kurt Busch, or Blaney. And then I don't mind pairing them with Harvick, Hamlin, Kyle, Chase Elliott, but that it does limit the place differential upside of your lineup, and you kind of are trying to balance these two factors of Dominator points and place differential. So let's talk about the Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin starting 4 and 7. Now these guys, I feel like they're going to be overlooked because they're not nearly as favored as Kevin Harvick. Now, actually, now that I look at it, Kyle Busch is super cheap, 9,300 on DraftKings.
Right.
On FanDuel, 12.4K, so that's more where I think he should be. But is everyone just going to pick Kyle Busch because he's 9,300?
I'd like to see, especially in the big $10, $12 tournament, what Kyle's ownership has been on a weekly basis. Now, God knows that it probably spiked last week when he was on the poll, but I have to wonder just how fed up people that are that play Cup DFS are getting with Kyle. I mean, we're waiting, and we're just it just isn't there. I hate to say it just isn't there. Now watch him; he'll probably win both the Xfinity and truck races tonight, and that'll breathe some hope into some people. But I mean, don't use the Xfinity car or the truck as a corollary to practice time for Kyle getting a feel for this race.
Well, I think it is important though, because like one of the things is like he can't perform without practice. But if he can in Xfinity and truck on tonight in today's race, like would that make you feel better about him not having practice for Cup?
Oh. Perhaps, but I mean, we've seen Kyle excel in Xfinity and truck races on the Fridays and Saturdays before the Cup races, and it didn't exactly materialize. But I mean, we are talking about 2 races in one day with seat time for Kyle. Kyle has a win here recently. That was the spring race in 2018. That was a bit of a weird race where a couple of guys set up their camber, and camber is the angle at which you've got your tires, and they overdid it. Namely, Kyle Larson and Martin Truex Jr. They both cut down their tires, went sailing into the walls, and Kyle ended up winning that day. 9,300 for Kyle. That's way too cheap. But if we look at his recent game logs, I mean, he started on the pole and he finished 21st last week. 6th at Kentucky, 38th and 5th in the 2 Pocono races. We don't care about 32nd at Talladega, and then 6th at Homestead. I mean, I'm frustrated with Kyle because I know he's better than this. And I think for myself, now you all do what you want to with Kyle, especially at this price. But I'm just going to take the wait and see approach with him. When he finally does it, I'll be a week late, but that's okay.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, certainly any of these Dominator plays are going to be risky. Kyle Busch, there's some red flags there, but the price really compensates for that. But I'm worried that he's going to be just the guy that everyone fits in because he's cheap. So I think a lot of sharps will be on him, given that he has the 3rd best odds and he's so much cheaper than the other guys up there. Well, let's talk about some place differential plays, and then we'll circle back and get the guys we missed here. I saw you tweeting about this morning. Christopher Bell finally has a price that's not completely absurd. So he's on FanDuel and SuperDraft. He's all along been kind of a great play, but on DraftKings he's been in the 11Ks today. For tomorrow he's 9,100. Does that move him back into consideration for you?
Oh yeah, definitely. And man, I'd like to ask the people in Boston. You've been running him above 11K for the last couple of weeks. I mean, why drop him down to this salary? Maybe it's based off of ownership, but I mean, crap. Even when he's been at 11K, he still keeps finding a way to make me look like an idiot. Into the top 10 by the end of the race. 9,100 for Christopher Bell. He's been running really, really well. That's good for cash. That's good for tournaments. You know, if you wanted to play him in lieu of another Dominator, I could definitely see that, because he's going to have that place differential, which is a whole lot easier to bank on than the Dominator points themselves. He's starting to lose his allure as the Money in the Bank champion pick on SuperDraft. You know, for the last couple of weeks, it's just been put Bell in your champion pick and then go on to your flex plays. And, you know, quite frankly, you can't blame SuperDraft for this. They come out early, like FanDuel on Tuesday, come out with their contests, come out with their salaries, and you know, there's no way for them to know that DraftKings is going to randomly draw Christopher Bell in the mid-30s every single time. It made him, you know, it made him chalk, but it wasn't because SuperDraft, you know, was intentionally trying to sway ownership. They've adjusted their algorithm. Now he's only, look at this, as a flex play, he's only a 1.35x multiplier. And as a champion pick, he's only 2.05. So he's definitely losing that luster. You're needing more place differential out of him in order for him to be the top champion pick. But, I mean, he's a play regardless on every site.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, the way I see it is kind of like it's like when everyone's the Red Sox are like 6K each, and then like they put up 10 runs a game for a week, and you're like, but they're so expensive that I have like Mike Leake in my lineup, but everyone's winning the money, so they don't care. And that's what happened with Bell. Is like, even though he was so expensive, he found his way into the winning lineup for like several weeks, and it was a rough couple of weeks for us. So I mean, like sometimes that happens. In that case, just like some of the lower price guys performed really well, and that allowed you to have the salary to spend on Bell. So I think he's going to be really popular this week. I mean, tremendous play from a projection standpoint. It's still quite expensive. See, the real chalk to me, I think that Tyler Reddick and Eric Jones in this sweet spot of being around 8K, starting 23rd and 24th. I mean, we know Eric Jones can get 70% owned if it's the right condition. This is not perfect conditions, so I don't think so tomorrow. But these guys are definitely going to be staples because they can do it all. They can get some dominator points. They can get the place differential. So, are you going to just plug and play Eric Jones and Tyler Reddick tomorrow?
Ugh. Eric has become like cheap Kyle Busch to me, where he's just too erratic with what is happening to him on the track, either by his own doing or what's happening for me to really trust him. And quite frankly, if you look at these finishes going back to Darlington when we first started racing again, I mean, it really hasn't been that great. That that cockamamie theory that I threw out about him kind of succumbing to the pressure of Christopher Bell taking his ride next year, there may be some truth to that. And you saw even in the All-Star race, that Eric Jones had premium starting position, and he fell back towards the end of the race and didn't end up being a net positive in your lineups. Eric's been really good here. He had 3 straight top 4 finishes over the last 2 years before finishing 10th here. I mean, even 10th isn't that bad. He himself has found his way to the front multiple times. He's averaged 17.2 laps led over the last 6 races here at Texas. 23rd, plenty of place differential. I do prefer Tyler Reddick simply because, on FanDuel, that's a $1,500 discount. It's a $800 discount on DraftKings, and I feel like Tyler's kind of been the more stable of the two. And if you look at the finishes, like if you throw out the 2 Pocono races, because Pocono is just a bad track for Tyler, but everything else has been pretty good. And over these last 2 weeks in Indianapolis and Kentucky, 2 top 10 finishes. But if I look at Eric, we're talking the 22nd and a 33rd place finish. So Eric, yes, in tournaments, no in cash, because I think this is the thing that you're always going to come back to. I can play Eric Jones at 8,600 on DraftKings, who starts 23rd, or I can just pay $500 extra and get Christopher Bell, who has that much more place differential, who's been honestly driving better. Tyler Reddick in both formats.
I think a really popular build is just going to be skipping all the 10K guys and going down to Kyle Busch, Eric Jones, Reddick, Bell. And then the other guy I'm landing on a lot is Jimmy Johnson. He's starting 20th and he's 9K. I mean, he's been in really good equipment this season. And I mean, I know it's his final season, so there's some narrative going on too.
Yeah.
But the past few weeks he's been in the mid-teens, so he hasn't really put up any meaningful fantasy performances. But we know with NASCAR, it just takes one race for everything to change. So I think at 9K, he's a good value with that starting position. Is Jimmy Johnson going to be one of your core plays tomorrow?
I don't know about core plays because I mean I just want to slam Harvick in every lineup, and then figure out what to do with Almirola and Blaney, and probably add Christopher Bell. So it's probably not going to leave me in a situation where I'm going to have access to Johnson. But if you are going for, because I mean, you honestly, like you said, you can honestly go for a really balanced build this week. Don't have to go above 10K to have access to anybody. You can get potential dominators all below pretty much the $9,500 threshold. Get plenty of place differential in that same area. And if that's what you're going after, then I mean, yeah, you can definitely add Jimmy Johnson to your player pool. We're talking about a guy that is a multiple time winner here at Texas, one of its best drivers in its 20-year history. The first race that they had at Texas after the repave, Johnson won. So you're getting place differential, you're getting the history, and we're kind of down on Jimmy, but quite frankly, last week Jimmy was running third at the end of that race before he went down and got turned in the infield by Brad Keselowski. So if Jimmy finishes third after missing the race due to that false positive test the week before, then we're probably looking a little bit better at Jimmy. But that 30th place from last week takes the bite out of Johnson. But yeah, place differential there, track history, love it.
Man, he missed the one race in Indy that was such a like ridiculous wreck fest. So maybe he got lucky there. Who knows? Anyway, um, I think going down to the lower price guys is going to be less popular this week because, I mean, you got great place differential plays and Jimmy Johnson and Christopher Bell, as well as Eric Jones and Tyler Reddick. Now, if you do go down, Michael McDowell at 34 stands out, but he's gotten a significant price bump to 6,600 on DraftKings. So then you got Corey LaJoy at 36 at 6,100 and John Hunter Nemechek at 28 at 6K. Now, I don't think I want to go below those guys for the most part. So how would you rank these guys? McDowell 34th, LaJoy 36th, and Nemechek 28th.
Okay, McDowell's head and shoulders above either of those guys. I mean, yeah, you're paying 6,600 for McDowell, but I mean he's been more than worth it. Plus, starting 34th, that place differential compensates for that extra salary that you're going to have to spend. Yeah, I guess really I'm going to go LaJoy over Nemechek at this point simply because of the place differential. You're getting 8 more spots for $100 more. Last year in the fall race, Nemechek finished 21st, and if we look at Corey hasn't even touched that with his recent finishes at Texas. I mean, that's one of the scary things with LaJoy this weekend is that he has been bad at Texas. He has certifiably been bad. We're talking about finishes of 38th, 28th, 40th, didn't race in the spring of 2018, 39th, and 32nd. This is a guy that has, Kevin Harvick has consistently been good at Texas. LaJoy has consistently been bad here. And that's one of your worries that you have to have if you're going to roster LaJoy is that maybe he just sucks at Texas and you're going to get a driver that starts 36th and finishes 32nd. With Nemechek, we have a one race sample here in the Cup Series. Picked up 8. He started 29th, finished 21st. So God, I'm gonna flip the script on myself and take Nemechek. Take Nemechek over LaJoy at this point.
Man, yeah, I kind of like that because they are really close in price, and I have all 3 of these guys rated within 2 points of each other. So Nemechek is starting 28th. I think that 28th is going to get more people on LaJoy possibly, but actually, let me look at the draft screen here because I do think that matters. Nemechek has averaged 27 points. LaJoy has averaged 24 points. So I feel like Nemechek might be sneaky popular this week, but I'll have my final ownership projections up tomorrow morning. McDowell, I think he'll be super chalky because he's just been winning people money, and he's starting 34th. He finished pretty good in several of the last races, 3 top 10s, so that's pretty inspiring. But I'm not that excited about his equipment, to be honest. So one guy that I know you've liked in the past is Austin Dillon. He's 21, starting 21st, 6,900, so a little bit more expensive. I mean, he's got superior equipment to any of these guys, though, and he's only slightly more. So how do you feel about Austin Dillon this week?
Yeah, I mean, with Austin, you're getting another guy that has generally, excelled for what he's driving. You look at his recent finishes: 13th and 14th last year, 10th in the fall race of 2018, 26th in the spring. But then you go to the fall race in 2017, 13th. Austin, for whatever reason, of course, his grandpa's the one that owns the company that he drives for. So he'll be in that car as long as he wants to or desires to race. But he always kind of excels towards the end of the season, and you see that with 3 straight top 13 finishes here at Texas. What Austin does in the heat and humidity of Texas, that's to be to be seen. But if we're just going to look at recent form, then I say that you trust that over the last 4 races, 13th, 18th, 14th, and 19th. So I mean, he's running pretty well, and we've seen in a couple of these races that by hook or by crook that Dillon finds his way to the front. And if he can find his way to the front, then he can generally kind of play the Ryan Newman game and block and hang out around there. So now you're getting Dillon starting 21st, has some place differential. That 6,900 that will put you ownership wise in a different spot because Michael McDowell is only $300 cheaper. You look at Ty Dillon, who starts 30th, and he's 6,700. So you pay more for Austin Dillon this week, but you're going to put yourself in a different spot ownership wise from the field.
Yeah, I like it. I think that he might be passed over by the field here. So we'll talk about some sleepers in a sec, but first, this might be more appropriate for some of our younger viewers. Make sure to hop on Insta and follow Awesemo_com because we have a lot of great content around these different athletes that are playing each day. And we also have a bunch of free giveaways on there. So make sure to follow us on Instagram. All right. And also, if you haven't already, click the thumbs up. Appreciate that. That helps us get some more views on this video. So I really appreciate your help. All right. So let's talk about the sleepers. Some of these guys, they're really good, but they're just not the best overall plays this week. And I classify Truex and Chase Elliott as well as Keselowski and Logano. They're just not. They don't have as good odds as Busch, Hamlin, Harvick, and they're not cheap either. And they don't have great starting position. But any week, these guys could easily win the race. They combined, they probably have a chance of about 30% for one of these four guys to take it down. So Truex, Elliott, Keselowski, and Logano. How are you approaching that range?
Logano, I'm not going to consider as a lap leader, like unless he right now, kind of the way that he's been driving, unless he's on the pole, I'm really not going to give him the strong look. Chase, like we do this dance every week. Chase always as your second, or your maybe even like this week, even as a third potential lap leader. He's running really well. He keeps finding his way to the front. Truex, let me see if I can pull this up. If we just look at green flag speed this year, Truex he's been running really well, especially here at the mile and a half tracks. I believe he's averaging either the second or the third most fastest laps per race. So, the speed is obviously there. And if we go back to, I think probably Atlanta is probably our best corollary track to Texas. It was a hot weekend in Atlanta. Now the surfaces are nowhere close to one another, but we're talking about a D-shaped oval. And Truex ended up leading the second most laps that day, right behind Kevin Harvick, kind of from a similar spot from where he's starting now. At Texas, Truex has been pretty good. He's got a bunch of top 12 finishes, except for that 37th place finish in the spring of 2018 when he blew a tire and went into the wall. I think that at 10,400, you're probably going to get pretty low ownership on Truex, especially when you consider Chase is 10, Brad's 97, Kyle's 93. Truex is in a weird ownership place that I don't know if a lot of people are going to click on him, but I think he's just as likely as Chase to become a lap leader Sunday.
I like it, man. I think that having one of these guys that's the second Dominator that's low owned really gives you a game theory edge, because all four of these guys I have projected lower than their chance of being one of the top 6 scoring drivers. I find that my top drivers tool. So I think that it really gives you a little bit of extra edge to have Truex, Elliott, Keselowski, or Logano this week. Now let's talk about the bottom range because let's just rule out a bunch of dudes. So under 6K, we got Busher 16 and Priest 25. Now that's just too far forward for these guys where they don't have much upside, I think. Do you see any value in either Priest or Busher?
Oh, yeah, starting 16th for Busher is a really tough place to get him with any upside. And I'd like to feel good about Priest, but I mean, the last couple of weeks it's been a tough scene for Priest. He starts 25th, so there's a little bit of a place differential there. And like if you're below 6K and you just absolutely need somebody to fill in your last spot, I can see it with Priest. He's probably the safest of all of these guys. But I mean, once you get below Priest, you are paying for these punts and their place differential. Because you've got BJ McLeod at 5,500 starting 39th. You've got Reed Sorensen at 53 starting 40th. And then you've got Timmy Hill starting 38th, but he's 5,200. So you're paying for place differential that probably in the end isn't going to show up after all, unless this is an attrition race. And I think that's going to be one of the main things. If you're going to build a bunch of lineups, you need to build at least one or two attrition lineups where people are wrecking because the track is slick. Maybe they adjust their camber wrong like they did in the spring of 2018, and guys are hitting the wall. And that's when we see some of these guys kind of sneak into the 20s, and maybe like Ross Chastain did a couple of weeks ago when even sneak into near the top 15. So I think if you're going to include these guys, you have to bet on Rex and attrition. But yeah, for the most part, I think they're all really kind of in a stay away zone.
Yeah, I kind of like Priest, as you're saying, is the one guy that maybe has a little bit of upside in this range. Now, I'm just totally ruling out BJ McLeod on down because all these guys, maybe Brennan Poole, and I guess like he's gonna be like all these guys are gonna be like 10 laps down by the end of the race for sure. So Priest and Busher, like they could be on the lead lap. I don't think it's tremendously likely, but it's possible. Now, what I'm thinking here is there is a world where the top of the value or top of the price tags really goes off. So like Harvick, Kyle Busch, and Truex all have big days or something. And then like the optimal lineup might be those guys with a couple of huge punts. But I'm just comfortable in that alternate universe, just going broke on my entries. I'm not going to actually try to predict that. So, I mean, well, you mentioned that Texas, the conditions are going to be very unusual tomorrow. So, should we expect more wrecks?
I think so, just because a lot of drivers have never raced Texas quite like this. And then you throw in the factor that there's no practice. So, I mean, they've got nothing from today to let them know just what this track is truly gonna be like. So, I mean, when they start off tomorrow, they're gonna really feel what this track with a fairly new surface races like in these temperatures. Because you can bet that if forecast is 96 to 99 degrees tomorrow, so you're talking about heat index closer to about 110, the track temperature about 130, and then 150 inside the cars. It's probably going to be really slick to begin with, and then once they start to build up rubber throughout the race, things will probably calm down. But I would bet on probably excluding the stage breaks, 10 plus cautions tomorrow.
Wow, that'd be a lot. That would also help some of the weaker drivers stay on the lead lap. So we'll see what happens. Of course, the more cautions, the more free passes too. All right, so one group of guys that we didn't talk about, we have William Byron starting 18th at 8K, Alex Bowman starting 12th, and Clint Boyer starting 17th. These are all pretty good drivers that it just doesn't seem like there is much incentive to go to them because of their starting positions. and the price just not being as good as some of the alternatives. So how are you approaching that range, Byron, Bowman, Boyer?
I've got Byron listed as a cash play in the race sheets just because he's $8,000. He's low. He starts a little higher than you'd like, but they lowered his price on both sites. He's 9,500 on FanDuel, 8,000 on DraftKings. So I mean that gives you some wiggle room for his starting position. Bowman and Boyer, I both have highlighted as GPP place differential finishing position drivers. Bowman seems to do well on these hot slick tracks, so maybe that'll play into him. I don't think that he's going to manipulate his way to the front and lead laps, but he's definitely a guy that could knock off some fastest laps, finish with a top 5 and at 8,400 that could pay off. And Boyer inexplicably got nearly a $2,000 discount compared to what we've seen the last couple of weeks. DraftKings has been running him above 9K solid for a while, and now he's at 7,700. So I mean, you really kind of have a honest question about, could I play Boyer in cash? And if you like to play with a little more upside in your cash games, then I could definitely see that. We're talking about the Stewart-Haas corollary here with Boyer, getting this running off the same information that Almirola and Harvick and ultimately Custer will have. You look at his finishes, 11th and 2nd in the last few races at Texas. He's got place differential to pick up, and maybe whatever information that Harvick and Almirola will be running on will be shared with the 14 team, and that could pay off in both tournaments or cash.
Nice. Yeah, I think Byron is a good play from every angle. I don't know if he stands out quite as much as some of the other ones, just because we got some excellent plays at the 8 to 9K range, like Bell and Eric Jones. I know you don't like Eric Jones as much, though. So if you think Eric Jones will rack, definitely pick Byron instead.
I just kept slamming him in my cash games week after week.
Yeah.
I would step away from the race and I'd be looking at the tracker because he was running in 10th, and then I noticed, no, he's not there. Oh crap, he's back in the 30s. What happened?
Yeah, it's always painful when they're like scrolling through the placements and you don't see your guy. Yep. All right, I like that range. I'll throw Di Benedetto in there. Any guy that has a realistic chance to win, I think, should be in your player pool. Now the next group, I'll just cover real quickly: Stenhouse, Wallace, Newman. I don't think these guys have that potential to win the race necessarily. So I think those would be guys that I might rule out just because they're starting 13, 14, 15. Yeah. You see any value there?
No. They're all starting way too high for my taste.
Awesome. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in. This Quaker State 400 or 500 should be pretty exciting. I mean, it's such a long race. There's a lot of Dominator points, so it'll be a good one for making multi-Dominator bills. Phil, any final thoughts here?
No, really. The only thing that I've got is that if it is going to be a hot and slick attrition race tomorrow, then get some Daniel Suarez in your life, because it's not going to be a 37 to 27th place finish. It might be a 21st place finish. And I mentioned him in my SuperDraft article this morning. Just him picking up that much because of potential wrecks will make him one of the maybe top 7, top 8 scorers tomorrow.
The bold call. I like it. All right, guys. Thanks, SuperDraft, for sponsoring the show. And make sure to use the promo code Awesemo10 over there. $10 gets you $10 free. 100 gets you $20 free. And you can enjoy their multiplier mode, which is it's a unique twist on daily fantasy, so I like it. All right, good luck, everybody, and hope we have a big week before some of these other sports come back. So we have some bankroll to work with. All right.